We are stoked.
I'm a terrible sore loser. I don't follow the rules.
All the bearded guys seem to lie. Yeah.
There are rumors galore.
I am so up and down on my emotions right now.
Retain salad.
Okay. Where there is smoke, there is always fire, etc., etc., etc.
You don't do it.
Been there, done that.
And we'll get into it later.
They know crap about hockey.
Come on. Well, I laugh it off.
I have no issue.
Here's the thing, though. I have nothing to do.
I'm okay with this deal.
There was no other option.
So now you have nothing.
We already blew it.
Win now, win now.
It paid off.
I will eat my pants.
Hey guys, it's Two Guys in Hockey Talk. I'm Pavel the Cat, the most knowledgeable man about hockey, and my uneducated friend about hockey.
Revan Ev at your service, giving you uneducated information on a weekly basis from Two Guys in Hockey Talk. How you doing, bud?
I'm good. I'm sorry. I had to get a jab in just for the feel good of it. But no, you do know hockey. It's me. I think it's opposite day because I think it's me who you're going to refer to as not knowing hockey. But Evan, we've got a jam-packed show tonight. It's episode 26 of season 3. We like to thank our sponsor, ASAP. Make sure to check them out. We have a lot of things going on with the trade deadline that just took place. But before we begin, grab your bevy. Make sure. Tune in, comment, and cheers.
Cheers, guys. Hey, before we hit into this, I just want to touch base. A few people have asked, especially on my Twitter area, what are we doing on prospects? We are going to wait to the beginning of May to touch on prospects because we got the draft going late June. And so with all that happening, we figured, let's get about 6 to 8 weeks out, and then we're going to update. But I just want to give you the 2 right now ranked prospects for the NHL entry draft this year, 2022, undisputable at this point, is Shane Wright for 2022 and Connor Bedard for 2023. Just a quick note, you can go and follow me on Twitter at RevanEv. And when you follow in there, you'll be able to see sometimes I'll retweet stuff out. We have a great scout. Maybe we can get him on the show one day. He shares quite a bit of information. His name is Cam Robinson. You can follow him at hockey_Robinson. But he has a lot out there on all the different prospects. He was talking and he shared, and so I've shared his tweet. Interesting enough, Shane Wright just a few days ago, it was exploding in the middle, and he threw it right in the middle of ice, how he explodes on there. He now has 14 points in his last 6 games. He's got 77 points in 52. He is coming on strong, and that's one of the things during the pandemic that they were left out on, unfortunately. I do want to say also, Connor Bedard, your 2023. The guy is so phenomenal. You have to check out what he is doing. He's got over 40 goals now. Over 40 goals. This guy has not yet turned 17 years old, and they are talking about him playing in the U17. Plus, he'll have the makeup of the tournament this summer in Edmonton for the U21 tournament. Plus, he's going to obviously play in the tournament again this next New Year, right? And for Boxing Day to start up. I mean, so you got to get yourself ready and follow these players regardless.
Yeah. If you're in the area in Saskatchewan or anywhere in the Western Conference where you can check him out, he's definitely worth the ticket admission, especially since that junior hockey level team is when you pay for the cheap tickets here in Canada. So it's a great way to get out and watch some hockey, especially if you don't want to spend the big bucks on a team that maybe isn't doing so well in your that you're a fan of. So
well, think of it, right? 4 days ago, he's sitting there, 20 games, 42 points, 16 years old. The first person in the Western Hockey League to ever put up those kind of numbers, and he's a winger.
Evan, is that any good? I can't tell. You're a goalie, so you should know better.
All I know is I don't want to face the guy, even when he was 12. All right, man.
Pretty solid.
We got a trade deadline that just passed. We got lots to cover. Lead us off.
Oh, man. Can we start with the Vegas Golden Knights and what's been going on chaotically with Evgeny Dadonov over there in that situation? So, as you all may know, just to kind of recap, because I know some of you are probably up to date with what's going on, there was a trade made with the Vegas Golden Knights and the Anaheim Mighty Ducks, sending Evgeny Dadonov with his $5 million cap hit all the way to Anaheim for Ryan Kessler and a second-round pick, right, to take on Kessler, who, of course, is injured. He's never going to play again. And he came back because they needed some cap relief for Alex Martinez and potentially Mark Stone. Now, it came out that potentially he had a no-trade list of 10 teams that he had submitted, and apparently Anaheim was on that list for whatever reason, right? Now, we can get into the specifics of why. So as of today, that trade has been voided, and now he is still a part of the Vegas Golden Knights, who, by the way, have been struggling in playing, and they're not doing very well, and they're out of a playoff spot as of tonight. So really, what do we do from here? Evan, what are your thoughts on the situation?
Well, I think everyone was wondering what's going to happen on the goalie situation first and foremost. We know they're dealing with some team chemistry stuff, but with them not getting that cap relief, because it wasn't just the $5 million this year or what was remaining, it was one more year in that Dadonov contract for $5 million. They were willing to give up this next year's second round pick with protection, or if they had won in the lottery, obviously, but in the lottery they could have moved it to 2024. That was a good high pick to unload some salary. However, they're now in a situation, and I see no way out of this. I think that we are looking at them missing the playoffs for the first time in their existence into the NHL.
Bold prediction. Well,
I think I did.
Interesting because, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I do think, and we talked about this before, I did say that I could see them when they traded to get Eichel in there, that they were prepared. As much as they said that they were in, the trade deadline showed us they weren't willing to give up much to really go further. I think that they already know that they can make a bit of a write-off, but they need to look like in Vegas that they're still competing and trying. And they do have an outside shot, but there's too much going on, and there's too many other teams that are getting better as they're worsening.
I think this is a little bit of a black stain on the organization in terms of how they've treated their players. I know people are familiar with the Marc-Andre Fleury situation, finding out that he was traded on Twitter, his agent not even knowing. So this is more on Vegas upper management taking steps that they believe, for whatever reason, improving on every position that they can, which fair, it's a very dog eat dog league, but you have to have some humility, and you have to have some rapport and relationship with the player, because initially everyone wanted to go play in Vegas because of how exciting it is to play there. That mentality may be changing in the NHL from rumblings around the league. And so you wonder to yourself, when Robin Lehner, I think it was last year, he had that Q&A on Reddit with fans, and he talked about how, not himself, but that some of the markets that people aren't a fan of were Edmonton, Winnipeg, and Buffalo.
Yeah.
What if Vegas starts getting up on that list because they just trade you away? Now think about it. They've traded at so many levels and so many prospects and positions. Couldn't they use a Nick Suzuki right now, who's lighting it up in Montreal, under Martin St. Louis? Couldn't they use Bradstrom, who's really come along, and he's taking a little bit longer to develop, but he is a D-man. So how do you go from that? But they got Max Pacioretty at that. And what about now with Jack Eichel, who's struggled to perform, right? And nothing on Jack Eichel. He's still an elite player. It's just he's had a hard time vibing and connecting. You need to build chemistry, right, with any line mate, any player, any team, any group. But Peyton Krebs and Alex Tuch are looking phenomenal for Buffalo. They are lighting it up. So
Krebs
what
does
good. That say about your organization? And of course, Lehner potentially being out for however long, and you really have Brossoit, who's a 1B, essentially playing, and I think he's injured right now, if I recall. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think, was it Thompson that's playing right now?
Yeah, Tom. Yeah, and he's been doing okay, but he's he's a 4-string goalie.
And I would go as far as to say that actually Brossoit is actually not a 1B. He is actually a 2, which would give him as a legit backup, not a 1B, you know.
That's fair.
So, you know what? Because we've let the folks know, we put it out there in some of our advertising for tonight's show. If you're here, you want to hear about the Colorado Avalanche. So why don't we talk about some winners and losers? I don't know if there really is a winner or a loser in some of these things, but we're going to, wait, you know what? We'll call it clickbait. Winners and losers. So let's talk about winners. And I want to talk about the Colorado Avalanche. They are a winner at this trade deadline.
Well, that's true. That's true. They're loading up. They're going all for it. Of course, Landeskog's still out, but they're really pushing it because they think they have a chance to win the Stanley Cup, and they are dead. You know, watching them play a few of the other teams in the last little bit, like they are fast. Cale Makar and Devon Toews, I mean, it's one of the best duos in hockey, right?
Yeah.
And really, like, what else can you improve about that team? And even Darcy Kemper has been on fire recently. His save percentages have gone up. He's been playing elite, like what you expect of him. Of course, injury is always a factor, so you have to be mindful. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on how Colorado did, their pickups?
So let's think about this. A lot of us thought Giroux was going to the Colorado Avalanche. It sounded to me like from a lot of reports that came out, Giroux's favorite spot was Florida. Interesting. Even a place, the President's Trophies of last year, a team that is in first place, leading the league currently. You think that they have a much better chance to get out and be in the Stanley Cup than a team like Florida. Not because Florida's not good. It's because they're in tough against Carolina and Tampa Bay and a couple other potential teams that could be wild cards. Okay, so he misses out on Sakic, but the money, because he doesn't want to pay them to hold on some of that money, he's able to add a top 4 D-man and add 3 depth forwards. So he brings in Andrew Cogliano, plays on your 4th line, center or wing. He brought in Lehkonen, and he brings in Sturm, great players, and a tough D-man, in Josh Manson to help that blue line. And all he loses is basically Bowen Byron, who does have some concussion issues. They're not sure moving out, and Sam Girard. I can't see. I actually personally think that both Colorado and Florida were the winners at this trade deadline.
I'm gonna say Seattle and Montreal because if we're talking about winners and losers, and I don't want to get into that, it's because
that's good.
Up at the draft, right? Like it's so hard to tell now. I mean, if you win a cup, everyone's a winner in that organization. It doesn't matter what happens, but really, like when you pick up a bunch of draft picks because you're building for the future, Seattle and Montreal did exactly what they wanted to do. You know, they traded a lot of their players away. There's still a few bodies that may go in the offseason, so we'll see. For example, Jeff Petrie in Montreal. There's a few others. Maybe one of the goaltenders in Seattle go, whether it's Drieger or Grubauer. I know they signed them long term, but if a team's looking for some stability in net, I'm looking at you, Buffalo, for the future. You know, maybe that's something that happens. The other team that really kind of surprised me was the New York Rangers. And I know we talked about them last week and a little bit, but it looks like they're really going all in. Now, Shesterkin didn't have a great performance a few nights ago. You know, his save percentage was a little bit, dropped down to earth.
Yeah.
But, when you go for Andrew Kopp, who's kind of, Swiss Army knife kind of player, he can play at any level and whatnot. You can definitely tell that they are trying to go for it. And so I think the Rangers are an intriguing one. And I really like what Minnesota did a little bit because when you go for, Marc-Andre Fleury, and, and you trade away Lehkonen, right, for Jason Middleton out in San Jose, it looks like Minnesota's really going for it, especially since they believe this is the year. And of course, they're going to be cap struck next year. It's going to be tough. And just most recently, I think it was Bill Guerin who said that the problem is in the locker room when they were going through a bit of a losing streak, so he's not going to fix it through trades and stuff. So, he really did a 180 and he came out and went swinging and, he paid a big price for Fleury, but I mean, he's been looking good and, we'll see how he goes. I mean, he's looking good in green.
Yeah. I'm going to say, because you're talking about who the winners were. I mean, obviously, let's just talk about Anaheim for a sec here, right? I want you guys to think about this. So Anaheim has 4 picks in the first 2 rounds of the next 2 drafts, and they have 2 first-round picks so that means in the 22 NHL entry draft, like coming up here. Now, what is very interesting is Seattle has 25 picks in the next 2 drafts. They start with 12 in 2022. They have 4 in the second round, 8 picks in the first 2 rounds in 2024. They have loaded up, right? So we can say Montreal. Okay, so let me show all of our viewers here why my partner, Pavel the Cat Zygmunt, knows nothing, absolutely nothing about hockey. He's talking about second and third round picks. 25% of second round picks survive, and only 12% of third round selections make it to the NHL. And listen to this, second round, only 15% of second round picks ever become impact players. And that's throughout history. And that stat has only been released only 3 months ago. So I'm going to say, loading up on all these guys, the only thing that it helps any team from my perspective, when you're getting second and third round picks all the time, is you're going to try and take those second and third round picks, find someone who wants them in that draft specifically, and you're going to load them up so you can get some experienced guys on your team for a run, maybe during the actual draft trade day. But yeah, absolutely. I do not think you're a winner by loading up on all these second and third round picks. When you lose first round picks, so who picked up the first round? Was it Florida? Did they not give up a first round pick?
Yes.
A first round pick. And who did they pick up, Pavel?
Claude Giroux.
So they gave up a first round pick for a rental. That's probably not going to re-sign there. Maybe he will. We'll see how well they play. Is it really the year to go in when you're facing Tampa Bay and Carolina? And if you make it, you're probably going to be facing Colorado. I don't know.
Or Calgary.
Yeah. Oh man, the Flame fans are going to love you tonight.
So my only thing is that out of 32 teams now, 31 previously, how many teams who have gone on to trade a lot have gone on to succeed? There's only one Stanley Cup winner. And when you make a bunch of moves, sometimes it doesn't pay off. Yeah. One of the things, for example, that you have to take into account is Colorado hasn't gotten out of the second round. So no matter how they look, they've struggled getting out of the second round. Now, so let's say they do finish the season. There's about 20 games-ish, plus or minus a few games for each team left. How many teams in the last, since I believe it's 2016, or it could be earlier, you have to double check on that, who have won the President's Trophy in the season because they could finish at the top, have gone on to win the Stanley Cup? Very few. There's always an underdog that defeats a better team that you expect in the playoffs, which is why, as everyone always expects, this team will run over. Tampa Bay will run over Columbus and nothing will happen. And then they got steamrolled by Columbus because the playoffs are a different beast.
Right.
You want to add grit. You want to add skill. You want to add abilities, 100%. But very few teams who trade away certain things are able to acquire players to play for them will succeed and get the Stanley Cup.
Okay.
And so at the end of the day, is it worth paying all that and mortgage the future for now? For some GMs, there's a lot of teams out there, as you just mentioned a few, Tampa Bay, Minnesota, Colorado, Carolina. They did that. Maybe not to the high extent. Even Toronto, right? They mortgaged a certain portion of their future. What are they going to do when they're depleted on draft picks? You're looking at Pittsburgh. One of the reasons Ron Hextall was brought in is because Pittsburgh's shelf of prospects and even draft picks was close to empty. Now they are able to sign free agents and guys and get them out of college, etc. Yeah, you have to have good scouts, but it doesn't always pan out. And there's always a lot of other things that are at play. So it's a balance, and you have to find the right balance. So I enjoy the teams that maybe like develop just a little bit, but not went all in. because that's when you have to be mindful. And one of I will congratulate Toronto on picking up Giordano, even though he is a rental. He wasn't paid for a first rounder, which I know that was the rumor from Seattle is what they wanted. So getting a second or paying a second for him, a second and a third, I mean, that's pretty solid, especially since he's partnered up with his former teammate, TJ Brody. We'll see if that helps Toronto get out of that hump, especially with that difficult Atlantic division.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's a balance. And not to say that in the summertime, Seattle can't offer some of the draft picks to other teams. I mean, we just talked about Vegas earlier. They're cap strapped. They have all these elite players, and they have no prospects coming up in the next little bit. What are they going to do? They've given away all of their prospects because they're all in now. What are those fans going to experience in the next 2 to 3 years if not this year, maybe next year or the year after, they can't make the playoffs?
Okay, let me take you back and speak to something. You're talking about making trade. There are teams that have done well with trade deadline. I hear it on TSN, on the Trade Center and all these places, how they talk about teams not getting better. I'd like to be able to take you back and actually look at the 2017 Pittsburgh Penguins, right? They added Phil Kessel. They added Nick Bonino. That's when they picked up Carl Hagelin. That was which became their invaluable HBK line that actually won them a Stanley Cup. If you even go to their finals when they brought in Marian Gaborik and they played with them and got them to the final on the first year. So a lot of times one thing that I think works well is when you're making a trade, you have a good idea that you might be able to re-sign that player if he plays well for you and gels. Yeah. And that's what Jim Rutherford did very well. Before him, even Ray Shero. Ray Shero was doing a good job. And we'll see how he does over in Jersey with it. But I will say Pittsburgh is one of those few teams who has been able to do something with that. Therefore, when you look at that, and including looking at what was paid, you're just saying Claude Giroux, right? I'm always worried about a first round. That's my only thing. Yeah. Now, you know what? If with Giroux, that team has loaded themselves up good on the front end, I'm still worried about their back end. But if they can get to the Final Four, which is exactly what they need to build the fans, build the excitement around this. They're set up because they're not going to lose a ton of guys. Maybe Giroux, who might take a discount to play and continue. I just want to mention, by the way, I laughed. One of the articles that I read actually talked about winners and losers. I'm not going to mention the writer, and so when he talked about it. He talked about one of the winners. Now, you're ready for this. You can guess maybe where he's from. One of the winners is the Maple Leafs because they acquired Mark Giordano. Well, I'm sorry. They have a lot more to do than just pick up Mark Giordano. They have a lot of other issues. If you're a Leafs fan, you know what I'm talking about. I wouldn't say they're a loser, but I wouldn't say they're a winner. What they did is they brought a little bit more toughness, a little bit more experience. Maybe they can get Mark to play in his hometown for a couple more years on a good contract. That's very possible. But, guys, they're not a winner in this time. But what they gave up, exactly as you said, those draft picks, do they really matter at this point, especially because the Maple Leafs need to win in this tiny span of window that they got?
100%. Now, one of the things that I do want to mention as a side note is for the Claude Giroux trade that you were talking about. A lot of people are saying, well, the Florida Panthers won that trade. Well, of course they won that trade, but Chuck Fletcher and the Philadelphia Flyers were hamstrung. Of course, Colorado, and then I believe the other two names were Boston, and I'm trying to remember the other team that was in it that was interested in him. They were handcuffed because Giroux said, I want to only play in Florida. And, you're kind of limited with what you can do. Now, he's on an expiring contract. Do you let him walk in the summer, or do you pick up whatever you can? And no disrespect to Owen Tippett, who they said he's been phenomenal so far, for what he's played, and, as they like to say, one ginger for another, replace one for another, but you can only do so much when you're limited with trades, right? And sometimes you hold the cards and you say, listen, this is what we can do and this is what we can't do. Colorado may have had a better offer, but this is where he wanted to go. And who knows? I mean, history will judge how that trade turns out. But I agree with you that some teams, it's difficult to gauge on whether a trade is won or not, like Toronto. They got what they wanted to some extent. Now, goaltending is one thing that they were looking at. Are they happy with that goaltending? That remains to be seen. Is Jack Campbell going to be healthy enough to lead them through a few series to beat them? Is Peter Mrazek going to be able to stand on his head in case Campbell goes down due to his history of injury? Hard to say. The other team I kind of want to know is Vancouver. I expected a little bit more rumblings from Vancouver and more action, given what Rutherford had come out and spoken about, and Patrick Allvin, because they talked about kind of like tinkering. But because of where Vancouver is in the standings, kind of in that middle, a few points behind the last wild card spot.
Right.
I think they held off. They only did a few trades. They traded Tyler Mott to, I believe, the Tampa Bay Lightning for a third. And, they got rid of Travis Hamonic to Ottawa and brought in from Toronto, Travis Dermott, so, they tinkered a little bit. And side note, I did watch Vancouver play Calgary over the weekend. Wild game. Of course, Calgary destroyed them. But you could definitely tell that blue line needs a little bit of work. And I really think they should have tried trading JT Miller, because that contract is going to bite them if they're going to sign an older center to at least $7.5 to $8.5 million minimum for that guy, because that's what he's going to want. And that's how good he is. Right?
Yeah.
So,
okay,
it'll be interesting.
Let the other part we didn't talk about with the Panthers is this. So they traded their 2024 for Giroux, first round pick, which is protected if they're in the bottom 10. Then it moves to 2025. But what we didn't talk about is they picked up Ben Sherratt, who is a depth defenseman.
Yes.
A depth defenseman, so he plays on your third pair. You're not winning the cup if he's on your top four. And so he's a depth defenseman, which is great. But they gave up the 2023 draft. And it's not
much. It's a little much for me.
It's not protected. What if they have a bad season next year and they're in the top 10? It's not protected, and that's the Connor Bedard and Matev Mishov, two generational talents that will be available in that draft. So they've essentially given up their 2023 and their 2024 first round picks.
That's how much they believe in this team.
Well, hey, and hats off to them, if they can make that happen. But man, that is, I don't know, that's a hefty price and good on them. But I just haven't seen it succeed. But so hey,
now,
go ahead.
The only thing I was going to say about that is that you have to also wonder about Aaron Ekblad in Florida, because he is injured and will be injured till the end. Now, I know that they gave him some cap space, and most likely he'll be back for the playoffs. But last year, as you recall, the series versus Tampa, although it was a grindy, physical, mean hockey, and I loved it, one of my favorite series that I watched ever, Aaron Ekblad could have made a difference in that series. He was playing elite. People talked about him having a struggling season a few years ago, and is he ever going to amount to anything? And now he's turned it up. But, of course, injury has, limited him. Can they get back to there? The other fun thing about Colorado, as you were wearing, is they did a little fun thing on Twitter. You guys can check them out. Is they talked about staying cap compliant even during the trade deadline, so that if they win, they are within the cap to winning the Stanley Cup. Someone that or alluding to Tampa Bay and Vegas, hint, hint.
Right, yeah. Hey, so think about this though. You're talking about Aaron Ekblad. So they're hoping he's back for the playoffs. Does Florida win if Ekblad's not back this season?
Nope. I don't think so.
And you just gave up your 23 and 24 first round draft picks for guys that are going to be UFAs.
But I think he's back. I'm sorry to say I think he's back. The teams knows better. It's the same with Landeskog, who just got surgery. Yeah. And, they knew he was going to be back. Players don't get surgery if they don't know they're going to be back, unless it's like a team that's out of the playoffs and they know that they can go on a break. So I don't buy that he's not going to play.
But what we do know is when players come back from injury, they're not always the same players for a good period of
100%.
time. And to go right back into the playoffs. That'll be interesting. We'll see on the timelines when the players actually make it back. So, hey, let's go back.
I know it's the small sample size, but look at Montreal last year with Carey Price and Brendan Gallagher, who were injured right before the playoffs started, and they did a stint in Laval, and they played kind of mediocre. And then look at that Cinderella story. So I know it's a small sample size.
But Gallagher's never been the same player since he's come back, though. There's a case in point, though, to me. I think Gallagher could have been the difference in those playoffs in the Stanley Cup. But that injury has really affected him. So let's go back to, we were talking about the Penguins, right? Let's talk about Brian Burke and Ron Hextall. Who would, I thought they were sitting, they weren't doing nothing. And then out of nowhere, Rickard Rakell is heading to the Pittsburgh Penguins, the perfect winger, I'm telling you, to play with Evgeny Malkin.
Yes. Yeah, no, great, but a little pricey for my blood for Rickard Rakell. I think that Anaheim slightly won that trade. Now, Rakell, he has a lot of upside. He was on the move already. There's been a lot of rumblings of him going even last year. And for whatever reason, Anaheim, even though they had a bit of a good start to this season, and they've fallen off a little bit in the last month, but they've still been competitive. For whatever reason, they're going still full rebuild, and they don't believe that they're there yet. And I wonder what this says also about John Gibson, but that will be a discussion for another time.
Yeah,
I think at the end of the day, Pittsburgh got the man they wanted, and I think when you have Crosby, Malkin, and Letang, you go for it. It's all it is.
So my question is, what do you think? They gave up Zach Ashton Reese, second round pick and a prospect. We don't know who the prospect.
Great player.
So who's a great player? Zach?
Yeah, Zach Ashton Reese. He's a solid player.
He's a depth guy. He's a depth guy, though, for a guy that can actually get you to the Cup Finals. And we know that anything's possible with those two superstars. Well, actually, three superstars. Tristan Jarry having an incredible season, not playing as well as he did earlier. No one thought the Pens would be in this position. A second round pick, again, we were just saying, does it really matter on the prospects? And so to me, they didn't really give up a whole lot to make a run. And in the Pens, I will trust.
That's fair.
I'm gonna be following Colorado and the Pens
series
closely
in the last 2 years. So what does that say to you?
That tells me, look out, baby, they're coming.
I don't know. They're going to have a hard time, right? Just like Washington. They're pushing, and I know you have these great players, but they're aging and they're getting older, and anything can happen. I mean, we'll see what happens. I mean, I always want Pittsburgh to succeed because when Sidney Crosby succeeds, the league succeeds. It's still his league. He's still rocking it.
Well, and I agree with you, right? Because
who knows what will happen with Malkin and Letang next year, but this is the last hurrah with these three guys.
So I want us to look at something. They have a stable defense, but they have an incredible forward. So let's look at this, right? You got Evgeny Malkin, you got Sidney Crosby, Jake Getzel. Brian Russ is a great winger, strong power forward. Kapanen, as much as you may not like him, he can even play on that third line. You got Jeff Carter. You got Rickard Rakell. You got Teddy Bluger on the bottom pairings. Evan Rodriguez.
Jake Kensel. You're forgetting about one of the most underrated.
I said him third. Okay. And then on the back end, you got Chris Letang, Michael Matheson, good steady guy. John Marino can give you both ends. Brian Dumoulin. You got who is it? That's pretty much it for guys that are stable. And then I don't know, and I haven't checked, but is Zucker due back? Will he be able to come back for the playoffs? I don't know. And they picked up Nathan Balua. Sure. So, we're going to see. I actually think that they're set up good as a playoff team. And I think that if you want to say a team that may surprise, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I do not think you guys are going to get what you think you're going to get from the Carolina Hurricanes, who surprised me and did almost nothing.
That's fair. Yeah, they didn't really do much, but maybe
they had a lot of room.
Much. And you're happy with what you got in that locker room, and they have a solid team, and this is the fourth year that they would potentially make the playoffs.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. Are they playoff ready? Are they big enough and strong enough to play in the playoffs?
Yes.
I think you're going to stand alone. For most people analyzing that team, they feel that they're a little
Carolina?
bit. Carolina
Are we talking
is
about
Carolina is missing the fast power forwards, the fast strong defensemen. They don't have
I think
enough of
Carolina
them.
forwards are going to be upset with you when you're talking about Timo Teravainen, when you're talking about Nino Niederreiter. Like, I'm sorry, like these are big boys. I disagree.
No, Niederreiter is an average guy. He's only around 205 pounds. We're not talking anything extra. Teravainen, I believe, is below 6 feet. He might go in tough and be like a Yamamoto, but he is not going to knock people around whatsoever. They're considered a small team. If you guys, we're arguing on this, comment in the section. And by the way, while I'm at it, we got about another 10 minutes or so to talk. And so I just hey, no. Hey, I'm just trying to advertise for us, dude. Guys, follow us on Facebook or on Twitter. Check us out on. You can follow Color Avenue, my buddy, and follow all about his cats. And maybe he'll even give you some hockey advice on his Instagram. You can follow me at Revenev. Follow us on our YouTube channel. Go there and subscribe. You can also get our podcast there if you're not following there already tonight. Okay, go back. Now you're thinking I'm thinking too much about the Penguins. You think
I'm gonna make a bet with you here so that all the people know how wrong you are about everything hockey.
Okay.
Is that the Carolina Hurricanes are gonna go farther in the playoffs than the Pittsburgh Penguins. Just you watch. Because you think that Pittsburgh is so big and mean. And not to diminish Pittsburgh, it's just that Carolina is built for the playoffs.
Okay,
and they do well.
So how are we going to average?
Go far.
Okay, let's average this bet out because everyone will tell you right now the odds-on favorite is for Carolina. So what is the handicap that I get on this bet? So we even it out. It can't be just straightforward.
I don't know what you want from me. Do you want a six-pack of beer?
Okay, so this is how it works. If the Penguins lose one of their key players that I mentioned, if they lose them in the playoffs, or they you got to give me a handicap here. You can't just go ahead and just say, oh, your team who isn't even supposed to make it, I'm going to bet you straight across for my better team who's odds-on favorites. You got to give me a handicap of some sort. Otherwise, it wouldn't be fair to me to take on that kind of bet.
Guys, it's not fair. You have to deal with injuries. You have to deal with the salary cap. You can't just start making rules because you don't think it's fair. What, do you need an advantage? I thought you were all about your Pittsburgh Penguins. And you believe
advantage.
All of a sudden, you have no faith.
Okay, you guys know
everyone comment below how Evan did not believe in Pittsburgh.
Okay, so everyone, you guys will notice my partner says, do I need an advantage? Well, he has the odds-on favorite advantage and won't give me a handicap. So if you know betting, guys, comment down below. We're not going to make a bet yet. I want to hear what you guys say, and at the end of the show, based on your comments, I'll decide if I take them equal or you guys tell Pavel that he's got to give an odds-on favorite and we'll put $20 on the line. So we'll see. But
just to clarify, you're the one saying that Carolina's too small and can easily be pushed around. So is that not a handicap for me?
Well, I don't know. Let's ask. Let's ask him. Let's ask him. Let's ask him that.
You guys comment below.
Okay.
Clearly, who do you think makes it further in the playoffs? Pittsburgh or Carolina? You guys can comment below and let us know.
And should we handicap the bet?
How I'm right and Evan's wrong.
And should we handicap that bet? All right, man. Okay, let's go over to you brought them up earlier, the Minnesota Wild.
Yes.
They picked up Marc-Andre Fleury. Lot of the storyline is they needed a number one goalie. A lot of writers are writing, what the? Cam Talbot is your number one goalie. That's actually unfair to get your team to that place and then say, oh, Marc-Andre Fleury's our number one guy. Like, why would the media even say that?
I know that's a little bit much. I mean, he can definitely win you a series or two, given his history. I didn't even think he was going to go, but apparently, given his history with Bill Guerin, he was open to the idea. They paid a bit of a pretty price for him, given that, he only went for a 7th rounder in the offseason. I mean, definitely a little bit of disrespect to Cam Talbot, who was also at the All-Star game, and he's had a solid season this year. Not to mention they traded Capo Kakkonen. He's gone now, and I didn't think he was playing that bad for that team. I think he had a pretty decent numbers, but he wasn't given the opportunity. The one thing that I think that Minnesota is good on, but it needs to play better, and it's a similar situation in Edmonton, is that their defensive pairing is strong. It's not the greatest. It's not one of the best, but it's solid enough if they play a good structured game and play smart, simple hockey. But when they don't do that, they make a lot of mistakes. And, I love Matt Dumba. I think he's one of the most underrated defensemen out there. He was a popular name last year in the trade deadline. But unless they're not playing at their top line, because they can score. You've got Kirill Kaprizov, right? Like, you're going to score. You got Matt Zuccarello, who is a small player but very gutsy and can put up points. Yeah. Joel Eriksson Ek, who signed that big contract over the summer. He's a great – I think Minnesota has one of the best third lines in the NHL. Like, that's how solid it is. That Kevin Fiala, who's had a hard time – he's been kind of roller coaster with his scoring, but he's really gotten it up, and – he can perform. He's also going to be looking at a new contract. Not to mention they traded away two of their guys, Ryan Suter and who was the other guy? You guys can help me remember who the other one was. And so that's what I think of Minnesota. They're my dark horse potentially, even though as one of the fans said last week that everyone's a dark horse for me. Well, that's because they're not Colorado.
And or Tampa Bay, as Evan would say in the
Tampa Bay. But what are your thoughts on Minnesota?
I think
Zach Parise. So Zach Parise and Ryan Suter. There you go. Just came to my mind.
Those were
I know nothing.
Not trades, but buyouts. I know what you meant. I'll give you a break because I put you under some pressure here today by that whole thing
Things
on a bet.
Popping.
Because I understand you don't understand how bets work and betting odds.
No.
You just know how to bet straight across the board, right? So, but hey, that's okay.
You see this? You're holding my hand through this whole episode.
Oh, my back! I got to go on LTIR. No, it's all good. It's all good, guys. So remember, you got to help us out. Who's right?
Stop faking at Mark Stone.
Okay, so I think we're going to have the Robin Lehner, Marc-Andre Fleury kind of situation all over again, just like last year with Vegas in Minnesota. I think they're going to go with the hot goalie. That's what they're going to do. So I think Ken Talbot will probably get the starts unless he's not riding hot going into the playoffs. They're going to give Fleury a chance. I think they're just going to ride hot goalies other than back-to-back games. That's my thought process. Now, I do want to say with Marc-Andre Fleury, so a lot of people have had speculation about what the no trade lists and stuff like that. I want people to recognize something about Marc-Andre Fleury. He is not anti-Canadian teams. A lot of people have begun to believe that. If that was the case, there would have been opportunity to maybe play in Toronto. We know they're a good team. There's a reason that he doesn't want to play on some Canadian teams. Here it is. And he showed it. And he talked about it. If you go back and listen to his interview, he wants a structured defense. Hello, Edmonton. Hello, Edmonton. He is only not going to Edmonton, okay, there's two reasons. One, he wants to be close out east to the rest of his family. But no saying, if he can have a chance at a cup, if he has a structured defense. Marc-Andre Fleury does not want to be left to the dogs. He dealt with that in Pittsburgh. That was an important piece when he was in Vegas. That was something that he talked about, is what, from my understanding, and some people that I've heard from that are in Chicago and that follow and write in Chicago, that he wants structured defense, and they were trying to do that. Seth Jones was one of the reasons they brought in, even though they were a building team, because he was going there regardless. Listen to this. Also, Minnesota, he talked about how structured their defense is. That's also why he didn't go to Toronto. So lay off of Marc-Andre Fleury. He is not anti-Canadian. It's not that he had every team. He doesn't want to play for teams that he can't win a cup, and he doesn't want to play for teams that don't have a structured defense. If you want these goalies to come play for you, they're putting their career and their dollars on the line for next contracts if they come and play and they get lit up by high-quality chances. Breakaways, 2-on-1s, 3-on-2s, 3-on-1s, right?
Or you're just going to start a Twitter brawl with all these comments about not wanting to come to Canada, but really, it's truly that's the underlying issue, and you just won't admit it. So, yeah, it definitely. There's a lot of factors that go into it. You know, people talk about, and we talked about at the beginning of the show, Dadonov not wanting to go to Anaheim, and people were kind of commenting as, why wouldn't you want to go to Anaheim? Well, one of the reasons is taxes in California, as I have recently learned. It's 12.6% taxes. So when he's making $5 million, and next year it's going to be 6.5 exactly his actual buyout, like payout, what it's going to be. 12.3% ish of that is around $600,000, 620. I'm just kind of rounding generic numbers, right? Whereas in Vegas, there's not as many state taxes. This is one of the reasons why players don't come here. In Canada, there are higher taxes as well. So when you're making X amount of dollars, you want as much gross income as you can. Not to mention there's other things that are in play. That isn't to say players can't handle the market. It's ebbs and flows. When you're winning and things are good, you're a god. When you're losing, of course, you may be mortal enemy number one.
So
you got to take the good with the bad.
So I just pulled it up while we're talking here. Taxes, when you're dealing with Nevada, where he was, 6.85 state levy, and the local tax could be as much as 1.53. So they say an average of 8.2. So you're talking 5% of your salary down the drain.
Yeah.
Good point.
And California wants to bring in legislation. Not that we're a political podcast. Aaron Singleton is. They're trying to create legislation where even after you leave the state, you're still paying a tax for being a previous member of that state. So again, there's a lot of dynamics in play whenever a player decides where they want to go and play. Not to mention, Anaheim is rebuilding, as we noticed in the trade deadline, because they sold off a lot of their big names. Hampus Lindholm's going to Boston, which again, we didn't talk about how Boston kind of shored up that, which we'll talk about in just a second, and re-signing Jake DeBrusk for 2 years. But, why would Dadonov, who's more of a veteran player, want to go play when he just left Ottawa, which is in a rebuild, to go try to win a Stanley Cup with Vegas, who at the beginning were considered Vegas favorites, right?
Okay.
Exactly. So, but Boston, let's chat a little bit about Boston.
Before we go there, though, we got to apologize to our fans. I'm looking up the taxes. Actually, it's about 7%, and then a 1% a lower locale. So they're actually barely ahead in California with their state taxes, is what I'm reading. So if anyone knows something different, let us know. But what I'm reading online is not adding up to what you just said.
It was on Nick Kipriosa and Justin Bourne's show. They were talking about it, that it was about 6% for the state tax.
So write it down. Okay, you guys go down. Tell us what the taxes work out to be that comes off that guy's paycheck. We want to know. Are we right or are we wrong?
So a good friend of the show, Mike Smith, he's a big Boston fan. I'm sure he'll have some thoughts about this, and we'll have to tag him at this moment.
Woo!
But what are we thinking about Boston re-signing Jake DeBrusk, who apparently rumors are still true that he wants out, but they signed him for a 2-year. I think it was $4.5 million season. Solid paycheck. I'm sure Louis DeBrusk, dad, is very happy. And maybe Jake can maybe pay bills for a month for him, or take him golfing one month. But they re-sign him and they pick up Hampus Lindholm and go for it. And Boston has really turned it up in the last month, and they're nearing Toronto in terms of standings. So you wonder to yourself, is Boston strong enough to get themselves over the hump, and can they push for one more go of it? Your thoughts, Evan?
Yeah. So let's come back to Jake DeBrusk. You know what? Something had to be done. Nobody, actually Louis, his father, actually commented on Edmonton show on Oilers Now with Bob Stauffer. He actually had a little bit of comment saying this was a win-win. He gets some money, some security that he knows they could have traded him if there was something open. If not, he's staying on a team that he believes still has a chance, at least at competing for a Stanley Cup. And he puts himself in a good position for next year, especially in uncertainty right now in the salary cap age. But you know what I'm really shocked about? Lindholm. That they were able to not just pick him up, but sign him. I kind of I get the whole Anaheim thing, but man, they just gave up Josh Manson and Hampus Lindholm. essentially, I mean, that was their two guys right now.
Yeah.
Like, I thought one of those guys would have resigned.
Do you remember when Anaheim had a plethora of defensemen and everyone was like, they're going to be one of the best, top 6 defensive teams ever? And now pretty much all those guys are gone. The other team I wanted to chat about is Dallas, and how clearly there's some goaltending concerns because they went after Scott Wedgwood out in Arizona. And it looks like not only Braden Holtby, but Hudobin are out. Bishop retired earlier this season. And so really you've got Jake Ottinger as your number one and Wedgwood potentially as your backup, because from a team that went from 4 goalies and, people talked about Holtby being a potential rental, you're now down to just these 2 guys. Now, Ottinger has been playing really well, and he's probably the goalie of that future of that franchise. But what does Dallas do? And they're really coming up on a playoff spot. Do you think the Dallas Stars make the playoffs?
Yeah. So
wild card spot.
I think they have a good enough team, but everything really, hedges on Ottinger right now. If you look at the game, even last night against the Oilers in their game, I mean, he kept them in that game. He was making incredible, and he's a clutch goalie. That's what he seems to. Ottinger has done. He's almost like Binnington was with the Blues during their cup run. So interesting. One of the local writers that shared some through his Twitter feed and a little bit on his Twitter, through his Instagram, was just sharing about Klingberg, because I know I kept saying I was really thinking sounds like they didn't really take any interesting offers. They didn't even try. And here's the reason it sounds like. It's because they feel like they'd rather take a run at it because it has everything to do with fan perspective. If you just let a star guy go, pick up a second, even if they picked up a first-round pick in a year or two, no one was giving up this year's, and it would have to be protected if they were taking it. And there was not an offer like that. They would rather take the chance that he walks, and at least they could put that on Klingberg for walking and give him a decent offer. But it's all about it's like, how will they see Klingberg if he walks versus if he stays, and the team would look bad trading him. So I get it, but I still don't see Dallas making the playoffs. I know I said that last week. I've repeated. I think they're going to be close. I think it's going to be a run, but I really don't. And I don't know. It's going to be a tough one. And if they make it, they will. If they make it, they will be the 8th team, the 8th wild card. If they make it,
I disagree. I think they make it. I think they have the horsepower to make it. They were, a few games away from the Stanley Cup final a few years ago. They're running up on the standings. I think Vegas has really struggled to put some wins together, which has allowed a lot of other teams to make ground. I think Vancouver has too much ground to make up, so I don't know how well they can do it. I think they're a little bit out. I think Winnipeg has really turned it on the last little bit. Connor Hellebuck getting another shutout really well. Nashville playing as well as they have. And I do want to shout out Roman Josi, who could potentially become 100-point defenseman again, which is shared by only a few other players, or McInnes, Coffey, and I think one other one. So, pretty impressive for him and what Nashville, is able to do. And Philip Forsberg, will he stay there? But really for Dallas, I think they'll make the playoffs just because of they're made for that, and they are a playoff made team. They know how to grind it up.
So this is when I say that, because I talk about Vegas not making it, talk about Dallas, but the truth is Winnipeg's only there because they got 10 overtime losses. So that's just telling you they're not winning enough. I don't think they can come back. They got Dallas got 2 games on hand and then 4 games on Vegas with 1 point separation. The only way Dallas doesn't make it, though, is if Vegas comes back on and Dallas just kind of plays maybe a 550 hockey, which they have a tough schedule coming up against some really good teams. So that 8th spot is really between Vegas and Dallas now.
Yeah.
So.
100%. Maybe Winnipeg could potentially push for that, but yeah.
Yeah, but Winnipeg's
they're only 4 points back.
they're 3 points back with 2 games in hand. Yeah, so you might as well call that a 5-point difference. And they play in the same conference, so their games are worth more when they play each other. It's possible if Connor Hellebuck plays the best game and we see, Winnipeg turn it around. So you are right. It is possible. It's going to be a tight race between Dallas, Vegas, and Winnipeg for that last playoff.
What did I hear? That I'm right? That I am right?
You heard that you're right. You heard that you're right.
Oh, my goodness. Can I get that in a plaque? Can you write that on the Stanley Cup for me?
Well, having said that, now that my co-host here has gone and ran his mouth off and made me feel like I regret saying he was right, I should say that we here at Two Guys and Hockey Talk have once again gone into overtime. So, final thought, buddy.
Well, I have a bit of a rant because we always have a rant at every episode, and I rant that the Vegas Golden Knights need to get their shit in order, or poop hockey pollock, as you like to refer to. And I think that when you have people who don't even know that Dadonov had a no trade list, and you're supposed to be a lawyer, Gary Bettman, I'm looking at you, the best of the lawyers, and fine tooth comb like every line of every inch. And you can't tell me that Cap Friendly and Puckpedia had that information, but you didn't, or Vegas didn't. That's a little bit of a black scar on you. And the fact that they didn't even get on the wrist, then maybe I have some issues. Otherwise, I enjoyed this trade deadline. I think it was fun. I think it was electric. I think a lot of moves were made that I didn't expect. A lot of players went around, and I'm very happy to see where this turns out. And especially literally that in about 5 weeks, the playoffs start. So I'm pumped. That's my rant.
Hey guys, just remember to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Make sure you follow, like us, subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's one of the easiest ways. We've had some people say that while they're out there, they love to subscribe on the YouTube because they can easily to come back and play their stuff on their local devices. Also, big thanks to our ASAP Sports Network and our partnership. Thanks for catching us if you're on ASAP Network. For those that don't know, ASAP Network provides great content, variety of shows of all. They don't shy away from nothing, even you wrestling fans. I'm going to have to jump in on a couple shows. I'm going to ask if they'll let me be a hockey guest on one of their shows. But you can follow them through their platforms, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, or you can go on your local Roku TV and catch them. But
if you're going to do that, I'm going to go talk basketball.
Well, on behalf of Two Guys in Hockey Talk, in the meantime and in between time,
keep your stick on the ice, everyone. And
what?
And stay safe. But
keep your head up.
Keep your head up and keep your stick on the ice.
Cheers,
stay safe, everyone. Have a good night.